A Senegalese court upholds a life sentence for Chad's former dictator. During this World Immunization Week, taking stock of what vaccines can do and using technology to improve education and economic opportunity on the continent. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidui. You are in for Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. As tensions run high on the Korean Peninsula over North Korea's nuclear missile program, U.S. lawmakers from both the Senate and the House of Representatives were summoned to the White House on Wednesday for extraordinary classified briefings by the administration of President Donald Trump. We get more details from VOA White House Bureau Chief Steve Herman.
Mid-afternoon, senators climbed aboard a pair of buses for an unusual caravan to the Executive Office building adjacent to the White House. There they learned about the broad range of options to remove the North Korean threat, which a senior administration official described as very grave. Senator Chris Coons called the briefing sobering. He said, however, no military options were put before the lawmakers.
I think it is constructive for us to be having bipartisan conversations as an entire Senate with the leaders of the administration, the national security and diplomacy team of the administration.
Harsh rhetoric emanating from both Pyongyang and Washington, the movement of a U.S. naval strike force, and fresh scenes from this latest parade in North Korea have led to fears in recent weeks that war may be on the horizon. But that is an overreaction, as an appearance of crisis seems to bloom nearly every spring, according to East West Center senior fellow Denny Roy, speaking to VOA via Skype from Hawaii.
And it begins with the fact that the United States and South Korea every year at this time carry out large military exercises, which North Koreans really hate. They find it very threatening. And it requires them to respond with very strong and very frequent bellicose statements.
Earlier in the day on Capitol Hill, the commander of the U.S. Pacific Command asserted the best way to reduce tension on the Korean Peninsula is to provide credible combat power.
With every test, Kim Jong-un moves closer to his stated goal of a preemptive nuclear strike capability against American cities, and he's not afraid to fail in public. Defending our homeland is my top priority. So I must assume that the Kim Jong-un's nuclear claims are true. I know his aspirations certainly are.
The briefings in Washington took place as a U.S. naval strike force led by the aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson is approaching the east coast of the Korean Peninsula. A Navy nuclear submarine armed with guided missiles, the USS Michigan, also has made a call to the port of Busan in South Korea as an additional show of force to the north. Steve Herman, VOA News, at the White House.
A massive explosion rattled Syria early Thursday near the Damascus International Airport, resulting in a fire and questions about its cause. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which monitors the conflict in Syria, says the blast did not happen at the airport itself, but could be heard within the city of Damascus, 25 kilometers away. Lebanon's pro-Hezbollah Al-Mana television says the explosion was the latest of airstrikes by Israeli warplanes. An Israeli military spokeswoman declined to comment about the allegation when asked about by the Reuters news agency. Israeli officials have made it clear they would not allow shipments of weapons from Iran to Hezbollah units who are openly fighting in the 6-year-old Syrian civil war on behalf of President Bashar al-Assad. Israeli forces have on multiple occasions used airstrikes or other attacks to stop such moves, with the military often declining to confirm it was responsible for the strikes. Hezbollah and Israel fought each other in the 2006 Lebanon war. Now, in a landmark case, a special tribunal in Senegal on Thursday upheld the life sentence for Chad's former president Hissène Habré for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Habré, 74, was sentenced last year to life in prison for rape and ordering the killing and torture of thousands of political opponents during his 8-year rule. His lawyers had appealed the decision, saying the sentence was too severe. The appeals court final verdict marks the end of a 17-year battle by victims and rights groups to bring the former leader to justice. About a dozen victims present in the courtroom in Dakar jumped up and shouted, "We won," when judge announced the verdict. The trial was conducted by the Extraordinary African Chambers, a tribunal created in 2013 by Senegal and by the African Union for human rights crimes committed during Habre's rule. A Russian naval intelligence ship sank off Turkey's Black Sea coast Thursday after colliding with a vessel carrying livestock. Turkey's coastal safety authorities said all 78 personnel on board were evacuated from the vessel. The safety authorities said on its website that the ship, identified as the Lehman, collided with Togo-flagged ship. The collision is being blamed on fog and poor visibility. Turkish authorities dispatched a tugboat and 3 fast rescue vessels. No information is available about the state of the Togo-flagged ship, its crew or cargo. It was also not clear whether either vessel was headed to the Bosphorus Strait from the Black Sea. A Somali pirate will be spending the rest of his life behind bars in a U.S. federal prison for attacking an American Navy ship in 2010. 31-year-old Mohammed Farah was convicted of piracy and other acts in connection with the armed attack on the USS Ashland in the Gulf of Aden off the coast of Djibouti. 3 other defendants have already received life sentences, while 2 more were given 15 and 33-year prison terms. U.S. President Donald Trump is calling for a dramatic cut in U.S. corporate taxes and massive reforms in the country's tax code that could affect millions of American taxpayers. The president's Treasury Secretary and Chief White House Economic Advisor unveiled the proposal Wednesday during a press conference at the White House.
Our objective is to make U.S. businesses the most competitive in the world. Right now, we have a 35% corporate rate on worldwide income and deferral. It is perhaps the most complicated and uncompetitive business rate in the world. Not a surprise that companies leave trillions of dollars offshore.
Mnuchin says the expectation is the corporate and individual tax cuts will boost U.S. economic growth to 3% annually, up from last year's 1.6% advance. 3 months into his administration, President Trump has yet to nominate candidates to fill a large number of senior State Department positions in Washington and to serve as ambassadors at U.S. embassies around the world. Ambassadors are normally political appointees and are traditionally replaced under each new administration. But as VOA's State Department correspondent Cindy Sain reports, this time the process is going slower than usual, with most ambassadors still awaiting nominations.
With tensions escalating in North Korea and elsewhere, President Donald Trump has only had 2 new ambassadors confirmed and has nominated only 5 others. Still not nominated? A U.S. ambassador to South Korea or an assistant secretary of state for East Asian and Pacific affairs. Brookings Institution's Thomas Wright says this lack of expertise is unprecedented and worrisome.
If you take, for instance, the recent summit with President Xi Jinping of China, there were very few Asia experts appointed to senior positions. Those people normally would be crucial in guiding that summit along. And so this, I think, is having a damaging effect now on an ongoing basis.
State Department spokesman Mark Toner this week sought to address some of those concerns.
I can assure everyone in this room and everyone in the United States and around the world that these are not vacancies, that there are senior State Department officials serving in acting capacities, but these folks are seasoned veterans of the Foreign Service and seasoned diplomats.
Asked why this administration is having more trouble nominating ambassadors than past ones, retired U.S. Ambassador Ron Newman weighed in.
There is a very small group in the White House that is controlling a lot of things. And there are some tensions within that group, but in addition to that, it's just small. So it's perfectly possible that a large part of the delay is simply that those making the decisions are totally overloaded.
Wright believes there are also political factors at work.
particularly some people around Trump, are intent on vengeance against people who opposed him in the campaign. And so they've ruled out any Republicans who criticized or opposed Trump during the election. But they have virtually nobody who's qualified for senior Senate confirmable positions, or very few people who actually supported him. And so we have a bit of a standoff.
With foreign policy challenges in Syria, Russia, and many other hotspots around the world, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson would likely welcome all the help he can get in having leadership positions filled. Cindy Sain, VOA News, the State Department.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, highlighting the gains and lapses in vaccine coverage. Stay with us.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
Welcome back. It's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Leno Mudu with details on World Immunization Week. Leno?
Hello, Esther. Well, this week marks the halfway point in an international campaign to provide children and adults the world over with access to life-saving vaccines. VOA's Carol Pearson reports on the progress and what's at stake in this campaign.
2, 3. Good job. Good job.
The goal is to prevent millions of people from getting vaccine-preventable diseases by the year 2020.
Can you take a deep breath?
No.
No? Okay.
The plan is to provide universal access to vaccines to protect people of all ages, from the very young to the very old. The World Health Organization wants people everywhere to know that vaccines work.
First, to say that immunization and vaccines are the most powerful public health tool that we have.
Dr. Flavia Bustreo says 35 years ago, 13 million children lost their lives from diseases that could be prevented by vaccines. That number has been reduced to 6 million, but that's still too many. Today, 85% of children are vaccinated against measles and other deadly diseases, but that number has to get even higher.
We need in a population to have a vaccination coverage that is above 90% in order to have what we call the herd effect, the herd immunity, which means that you cover the children that are vaccinated, but also because of the reduction of transmission of the infections, you also cover the children that are not vaccinated.
6 years ago, 194 countries signed on to the Global Vaccine Action Plan to boost those numbers and to end polio. Right now, there's a special urgency to get all children vaccinated against polio. In most countries, it's a disease of the past. Polio only exists in 2 conflict zones, in northern Nigeria and along the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Last year, there were only 37 cases, compared to the 350,000 cases in 1988, when the eradication campaign began.
The last part of eradicating any disease is always the hardest part. If you don't do it, you lose everything. To do it, you've got to really bring all the energy and commitment that you can to bear, and it requires a special kind of dedication.
The UN plan also calls for controlling all vaccine-preventable diseases and to be well on the way in developing new vaccines for other diseases that plague our world by 2020. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
Now, as Somalia struggles with drought and some health challenges, the United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, has launched a measles vaccination campaign in the East African nation.
UNICEF says thousands of children have been infected by measles in famine-threatened Somalia. The country has already been hit by an epidemic of cholera. Many of the children have never been immunized before due to conflict, as well as an ongoing drought that has led to their displacement. To address the growing health challenge, Somalia launched a campaign to vaccinate some 360,000 children in 1 month.
We know that the measles can spread quickly in overcrowded displacement camps and IDP settlements, of which there are so many in Baidoa. And we know only too well from 2011 famine that measles, combined with malnutrition and displacement, is a lethal combination, especially for children.
Almost 5,700 cases of suspected measles have been reported across the country since the beginning of the year. That's more than the total number of cases in all of 2016. Measles is a viral respiratory infection that spreads through the air and contact with infected mucus and saliva. The vaccination campaign launched this week in the central city of Baidoa. At least 70,000 people came here in March in search of aid.
We already know of at least 16 suspected cases in Baidoa, which means that the true numbers are surely much higher.
More than 6 million Somalis, half of the population, need emergency food aid, including close to 1 million acutely malnourished children. The United Nations is racing to avoid a repeat of famine in Somalia, where more than 250,000 people died of starvation in 2011.
To malaria, researchers in Sweden say they have made some steps in helping to control the mosquito-borne disease.
Swedish scientists say the malaria parasite in infected humans sends out a signal to attract mosquitoes to feed from them. They say the system helps the malaria parasite to spread and survive without killing the host. This then continues the cycle of infection. In a laboratory at Stockholm University, the scientists experimented by feeding mosquitoes with infected and uninfected blood.
I always see when I offer the infected blood to mosquitoes, they are faster. And then after that, I discussed with my mentor, Ingrid Fay, the professor Ingrid Fay, and then I just explained my understanding depends on this system. And she offered me to basically prepare a test for that. And then I make it, and I understand yes, it's really fast. In 90 seconds, all the mosquitoes come and are really fed and completely engorged and fly away.
The parasite produces a molecule called HMBPP, which stimulates human blood to release more carbon dioxide. It makes the blood more attractive to mosquitoes, causing them to eat more. Professor Ingrid Fay of the Department of Molecular Biosciences.
The interesting thing was that when we took away the red blood cells from the blood and just gave them serum with this molecule, they didn't care. So it was the same with the control and the actual test, which was really interesting. And from that we could go on and find out then that it was the red blood cells that were activated or inducing the release of certain smells or volatiles that, in addition to carbon dioxide, attracted the mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes were previously thought to randomly collect the malaria infection and pass it on by biting an infected host.
But we understand, no, this is not a chance. Actually, the parasite make a signal for its own transmission. And if we can just disrupt these signals, then we can just maybe disrupt this cycle of malaria after this long, long time. The mosquitoes would like to bite the infectious person. We trap these mosquitoes, then we control the system. And trapping could be the best and the first idea for us.
The research was published in the journal Science. Linor Moudou, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Linor Moudou. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you, Linor. Be sure to watch Linor Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a high-tech solution helps rural communities improve education opportunities. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In South Africa, the Freedom Movement, a new alliance of opposition parties and activist group, gathers in Pretoria for a mass rally against President Jacob Zuma. In Nigeria, hundreds of children abducted by Boko Haram in the Damasak region still unaccounted for despite its recapture by Nigerian troops in 2016. In South Sudan, female students at the University of Juba take self-defense classes to raise awareness about gender-based violence. Finally, in Niger, hundreds of gold diggers descend on an area south of Niamey after reports gold was discovered in the area. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
And welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Brazilian men are ditching beauty salons and seeking out newly revamped barbershops that continue to pop up to fill an emerging male niche in the South American country. Brazilian entrepreneurs say they're moving away from the unisex salon and specializing in men-only barbershops with a focus on beards and pampering men. Part of the trend could be associated with the widely noted Western resurgence of facial hair. Polling shows Brazilian men are more conscientious of their appearance and feel less inhibited to spend time and money on their looks than they might have in decades past. And finally, some of the best cooks in the world think lionfish, a venomous predatory fish which is breeding out of control and destroying marine ecosystems in the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea, is delicious. Native to the Pacific Ocean, lionfish have no natural predators in the Atlantic waters, and females can spawn nearly 2 million eggs per year. Chefs are hoping a new robot called the Guardian could make the hunt for lionfish easier. Its first prototype can capture and hold about 10 fish before resurfacing. And that's what's trending today. Education remains the fundamental tool to alleviate poverty in most African communities. And in Ghana, TechAid, a technology social enterprise, has come up with a different solution to deliver educational content to rural schools using new technology. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
Having access to a library in most parts of Africa can be a challenge. But in Ghana, it just got easier. Thanks to TechAid, a technology social enterprise that has developed e-solutions to tackle some of the country's continuing education challenges. Kafui Prebi is one of the brains behind TechAid.
We have developed products specifically for education, and we've been in this space for close to 10 years, delivering technology solutions in education and supporting rural development. And two of our key products that we've developed over the period is EduLab, which is our education computing solution for schools, and with the latest one, which is Asanka, which is our content delivery system.
As the country becomes more connected to the internet, educators and publishers are finding new ways to reach young audiences and their developing minds. Many students have never experienced the world through reading because they don't have access to a library. But TechAid is changing this reality. When you talk about schools, are you talking about rural schools or you're talking about urban schools?
The focus has always been rural schools to start with, because my passion has always been to bridge the digital divide. You know, as a UNICT fellow from 2001, my unction of my life was how to bring technology into schools.
TechAid has built over 70 edulabs in rural areas where funding, teachers, and resources are scarce. The technology is not free to schools, but TechAid has partnered with IBM Corporate Service Corps, Ghana's Ministry of Education, and several banks to provide funding.
Lately, we've started to create a tripartite kind of relationship in Ghana between TechAid, the schools, and the banks, where the banks provide access to funds for the schools to be able to access the technologies that are required to improve teaching and learning in schools.
Kafuyi Prebi says that through their programs, students can access approved educational content, including audio, video, and interactive games, and with IBM's pro bono consulting program, they have been able to take this initiative to the next level. Gina Tesla, IBM's Director for Corporate Citizenship and Corporate Affairs, says Ghana has long been a launchpad for innovative collaboration, making it logical for IBM to partner with TechAid in Ghana.
What we want to do is to help provide the highest skills possible to help solve some of the world's most pressing challenges.
To date, IBM's Corporate Service Corps and TechAid are working very closely together to support girls' education under the late Girls Learn initiative, launched by former U.S. President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama in 2015.
The whole premise is to help support greater access to education for adolescent girls. There are at least 62 million girls worldwide, adolescent girls worldwide, who are not receiving education.
The TechAid's solution to deliver educational content in rural areas has potential to be replicated in many African countries. TechAid has its sights set on another innovative idea called Asanka, which means community ball. It's a collection of important content for everyone to access. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Africa Rising indeed. Thanks, Paul. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune into VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and a very good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. When you travel, you take things with you and pack them into bags and suitcases. All those things are called baggage.
Baggage. How is your friend Lily doing? I haven't seen her lately.
Lily? I stopped hanging out with her.
Why? What happened?
Nothing happened. She's just got